You know a villain is a problem when the writer looks at the guy who could end the entire franchise and says, "That's cute, that's a very cute resume, but can you do more?" That's basically where Jura is. Isshiki's actions spent years traumatizing fans. For Jura to just stroll up into the room and make the therapist of said fans suddenly feel the urge to go buy a vacation home. Boruto 2 Blue Vortex has the chance to subvert expectations by climbing the figurative Mount Everest and reveal the top of the mountain was just a parking lot, and that's exactly what the manga needs. Join me in today's newest Naruto Explained video where your OBC, your original Boruto chief, is taking a look at why the reveal of Jura killing Kawaki in every single timeline is a much bigger deal than you realize. Also, the chapter review is up on the channel and will be linked in the description box and in credits for those who haven't seen it just yet. Also, for the Is This AI crowd, here's your scorecard. My words, my voice, not everything faceless is AI. Some of us aren't lazy, using transition words and transition phrases to give myself a verbal reminder of where to put those transition cards that you get inside the video. That isn't AI. That's basic stuff that you should have learned in middle school, high school, whatever, when you learn how to write an essay. For the longest of times, the biggest question in the fandom wasn't if Jura was wrong. Everyone knew it just based on how he debuted in the manga. The question was, how strong was he? Him being stronger than Jigen was a given. We said it here on the channel that Jigen levels of power would be the new Frieza or Super Saiyan, where they're benchmarks, as in they're the entry point. Sure enough, Jigen levels of power, they're not impressive anymore. No, people started questioning, was he stronger than Isshiki? Which brought up the same issues of people thinking that a Ten Tails can't be stronger than what you saw in the war arc. The same people that in 2026 still think that Naruto can't be stronger than the full Nine Tails who fought Hashirama, or that Kakashi isn't as strong as he was in the war when he had the Sharingan. All of those takes are completely incorrect. Boruto 2 Blue Vortex chapter 36 just quietly confirmed for us that Jura was indeed more than just aura. He was a whole monster. His power was on a different tier, and it was something that we should have known. Boruto dies against Jura in almost every timeline. Kashin Koji spent years training Boruto a bunch of jutsu that Boruto in some cases didn't learn until he was in his 20s. And despite having all that training, Jura, once he got serious, knocked Boruto unconscious easily and was about to kill him. Now we have context. That is the most dangerous thing that a story can do. It's also the smartest and the most clear sign that we're headed towards an endgame with Jura's character. We learned that it didn't matter the timeline at all. It didn't matter the power-up that Amado gave Kawaki. In no timeline did Amado's daughter ever get revived. In every timeline, Kawaki was killed and rolled up into a carpet and dumped in an alley somewhere. That matters more than you realize, and it's not just to hype up Jura. It matters because it means Amado isn't guessing anymore. He has concrete data and a variable that never changes in every timeline. That variable is Jura, and he kills Kawaki. For someone like Amado, it means if he wants to keep Kawaki alive, he has to think outside the box. Just giving Kawaki ninja tech upgrades and Isshiki's attack power, that's not enough. That one line took Jura, who was already accepted as being a strong character, and it made him an even bigger threat. More importantly, it built on Boruto's conversation with Kawaki. He told him to get Isshiki's full attack power, and that with it, they had a chance to destroy Jura. Two people above Jigen in power already. They needed more power to have a chance to win. Just the fact that the two people in a Jigen tier working together wasn't a guaranteed win was our first sign that Jura was a couple of tiers higher than them, because to take down a collective, or to even run a gauntlet of people that are in the same tier as you, you can't just be relative to them. You have to be significantly stronger than the sum total of all of them. Then we learned Boruto would need Momoshiki's chakra added to his own. So now you're looking at Boruto, whose own base goes above Jigen, needing to add Momoshiki's chakra on top of that, plus fighting alongside Kawaki, who should have Isshiki's full attack power. And that was the story saying they needed that to win, and it felt like a perfect world scenario based on everything we know about how battles with the Shinju happen. Everything needed to break right. Conditions needed to be met before the battle began. Just given how we've seen that be the case with every Shinju. Any one of them could have easily wiped out the shinobi they were fighting if they were allowed to fight them in a natural way, without prior knowledge about their weaknesses being given to them by Kashin Koji. Boruto himself outright says that killing someone as strong as Matsuri wouldn't have been easy if it weren't for those circumstances. Every battle was specifically set up to exploit those weaknesses, whether mental or physical. Jura is different. Based on what we've seen, Jura doesn't have weaknesses. You could argue his weakness is his love for knowledge and a tendency, like Jigen and Isshiki and Code, to fight down to the level of somebody that is weaker than him. That means nothing if you can't exploit the weakness. Boruto's conversation with Kawaki about Jura showed us something, as did Amado's initial viewing of Kawaki fighting Jura and Jura's combat ability. With Amado, you knew that the wheels in his head, they were turning. He was calculating, weighing Kawaki's increased power and then multiplying it by whatever percentage of Isshiki's attack power that he withheld from Kawaki. When Amado told Sumire that Kawaki can't win, it wasn't just about that moment right there. He was also potentially thinking about the future. You don't need to see Kawaki at full power in that moment to know that he can't win. A trained eye, familiar with the output of Isshiki's chakra, can look at the battle as it unfolds and project how it would go if full power was used. Kawaki thought with a little bit more power he could win. This chapter confirmed that Kawaki would still lose. Kawaki was overconfident. There's a big gap in the power. It's too big. Think about how insane that is. The story is telling us that the strongest version of Kawaki, with ninja tech enhancements and Isshiki's full attack power, can't win. Jura is just that strong. That's not done just to raise the stock of Jura's character. That's something you do when you're raising the entire ceiling for power in Boruto. You're making it clear. We're moving away from Isshiki levels of power. It's no different than what Naruto's manga quickly did. Jonin level was considered a big deal. Then we met Orochimaru, who made Kakashi piss himself. Then we saw Kage level combat. Then we saw when it came to Kage level, there are tiers to it, and people like Itachi were multiple tiers above the entry point for Kage level. Then we saw there were 6 pass levels of power. And then we saw there are tiers to 6 pass power. Now we're seeing that there are tiers to Otsutsuki level power in Boruto. We've already seen it, but the story's spoon feeding it now. The benchmark isn't Isshiki anymore. Jura is that benchmark. That's good storytelling. That's an author who has good instincts. Fans don't want to see it because agenda. You don't want to see your favorite character get surpassed. But for the purposes of writing the story, it doesn't matter. Battle shonen, especially long-running ones, they eventually reach a crossroads. The story either keeps gassing up the past villain and the powers stay below that villain, or in that same tier, or they keep moving the bar higher, which is what the majority of the series will do. It becomes a choice of, do you stay with the nostalgia of the past, or do you embrace a future beyond? Like with my favorite manga, Rurouni Kenshin. Shishio is one of my favorite characters in that series. Kenshin's brother-in-law destroys him in a fight, and in the sequel manga, multiple characters scale above Shishio. Even some of the henchmen in the crew for Kenshin's brother-in-law scale over the very same villain who nearly killed the hero in the middle portion of the story. The reason most battle shonen will go the route of introducing a villain that is stronger is to avoid the question that readers will ask, which is, if they're weaker than the last villain, why should I care? Why should I not believe they can just one-shot this weaker person? That's why we could say once they hyped up Code's power as being above Jigen but below Isshiki, which that is something stressed multiple times in part 1, Jigen and Isshiki are specifically referred to as two different people with two very massive gaps in power. As soon as we got that information, I went, Code is going to be a benchmark since his power is being constantly compared to Jigen. Stronger characters are going to come towards the end of the series, or when we get into the time skip, and that's where we are. We've got stronger characters. Interestingly enough, the approach has been a bit different with Jura and the Shinju versus what we saw with Isshiki and all the car inner members who served under Jigen. We jumped into the Shinju threat faster. They expressed themselves as threats faster in the manga, but ironically, it feels like we're on a similar pace for them to be defeated. Maybe a little bit longer, but we're on a similar pace. Isshiki was gone by the end of 13 volumes. We're going into volume 10 of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex with chapter 37 when it drops in September. Hidari is the last one standing between Jura and defeat. In a moment like this, that's where a battle shonen typically makes the enemy even stronger. You build them up further to be that much more of a bigger threat, a bigger menace. Then you pull the rug. Usually they let their arrogance get to the better of them or something else happen. Amado learning Kawaki can't win established Jura as someone whose full power we haven't even fully scratched the surface of exploring. In all his battles, Jura never completely fought in a serious level. Against Himawari, it was an experiment to see how far her body could go and why she was a human and yet beyond Jinchuriki level and closer to being a tailed beast. Against Boruto, he fought down to his level for a while. He got his leg cut off, got pissed off, and proceeded to knock Boruto unconscious with a couple of hits once he got annoyed. Against Kawaki, he took his attacks and then he said, yeah, I'm just gonna talk, sit down before I give you a reason to sit down. At no point was his full power on full display. We caught glimpses of it, glimpses that didn't even show enough to measure how far his power went. But it was enough to answer the question of, is he stronger than Jigen? That answer is yes. Now we just need to see how much stronger than Isshiki Jura is. This makes sense when you realize for an inspiration for both Masashi Kishimoto with Naruto and with Mikio Ikimoto in Boruto is Togashi. In particular, his classic manga, Yu Yu Hakusho. Yu Yu Hakusho is also, from an animation perspective, so not the artwork, one of Studio Pierrot's best animated series. When we talk Big Three, you talk One Piece and Naruto and Bleach. When you go back to the 90s with Weekly Shonen Jump, it was Dragon Ball, Yu Yu Hakusho, and Rurouni Kenshin. So I say that to say this. This series that inspired Ikimoto and Kishimoto, Togashi wrote it where Toguro felt like someone who couldn't be defeated. He only kept showing percentages of his power. No matter how much Yusuke and company leveled up, it felt like for many dozens of chapters he wasn't going down. Then Yusuke finally overcame him. The payoff, it was earned. It was a beautiful scene. Then we learned not only was Yusuke's predecessor stronger than Toguro, but Toguro was only a B-class demon, and that the legendary demons were considered A-class and god-tier demons were considered S-class. Suddenly, all those past experiences and struggling reframed everything. I said to say this, Jura is being revealed to be this strong and bored, so it works for the exact same reason, because it is reframing how we saw Jigen, Isshiki, and Baryon Mode Naruto. When a series does this, the character isn't changing, it's the audience that is changing. The audience changed because they got new information. The mountain the heroes struggled to climb was just the first mountain, but an even bigger one awaited them. It doesn't make the struggles climbing that past mountain any less significant. It just means that, like life and all things in life, things do not stay stagnant. Life either has ups or downs, but what Boruto has shown you is that something consistent with real life is happening. Growth in real life rarely is one continuous chart that just always goes up. In reality, you go up, you plateau, you go up some more, then you take a few steps back, then you hit your second win and you go up again, and then you plateau again. Outliers do not make the norm in life. The same is true for most battle shonen when it comes to power increases. Some get it right seamlessly the way that Toriyama did with Dragon Ball's 42 volumes. Some do a steady increase and then a sharp explosion at the end the way that Kishimoto did with Naruto. Others would do what Hiro Mashima did with Fairy Tail sequel, or what Koshi did with My Hero Academia's manga. Respect the past benchmarks, so Agnologia and All for One's prior power levels, and then after staying in that funky space for a bit where nobody surpassed it, you start laying the seeds for characters to move relative in the case of Hero Mashima, with characters being relative to Agnologia, or moving beyond Prime All for One like we saw with Horikoshi. Boruto appears to be walking a tightrope and finally saying, let's raise the stakes. That's why you've had a slower build to Boruto and Kawaki versus Jura. A payoff like that needs to be earned. It's the reason Jujutsu Kaisen made you wait for Yuji versus Sukuna, and you had to go through a whole gauntlet of fights before it. Payoff had to be delayed. A good writer understands how to redraw the map for the audience at the right time. A great writer understands how to do it while also avoiding showing the whole figurative continent. That's what all those battles with Jura did. That's what the reveal of Kashin Koji saying Jura kills Kawaki in every timeline did. Just as the person looking at the map knows there's more that they aren't seeing, readers now know with certainty there's more to Jura's power than we will see. It makes readers ask, how much stronger than Isshiki is he? More importantly, Jura being this strong protects Isshiki's legacy. That sounds strange at first, but it isn't. The knee-jerk reaction by most battle shonen fans is to say if you let someone stronger surpass a character, it disrespects them, but that's missing the forest for the trees. Isshiki remains strong, just as Toguro remains strong. His power has just been reframed. Naruto still had to sacrifice Kurama for a chance to win. Sasuke still lost his Rinnegan because Momoshiki took advantage of that dojutsu blinding smoke bomb, the cloud still being in the air from the grenade that was launched in the Isshiki fight. He did that to stab out Sasuke's eye when his Sharingan was cut off and his guard was lowered. Konoha was still helpless against Isshiki when he pulled up, and had Boruto not moved that battle, massive chunks of Konoha would have been destroyed because Isshiki was kicking Naruto all around the village. When they heard Code was stronger than Jigen but weaker than Isshiki, the characters literally breathed a sigh of relief. Code had none of Jigen's hacks, had only the raw power, which meant that he could be playing against. But if he had Ishiki's level of power, they were cooked. The story is using Isshiki without ever having him throw a punch to measure Isshiki against. Now all that's left for the story is to finish destroying the benchmark known as Isshiki, while setting up the next threat after Jura, because the strongest enemy you've ever seen is often only preparing you for the enemy that is coming afterwards in a battle shonen. Obviously, if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing. Click here on the left, check out that chapter review, or click here on the right to check out this video from YouTube that it says you would enjoy on the Naruto Explained channel.